My name is Marcus Evans, and I'm 34 years old. 3 years ago, I had everything a respected career as a high school science teacher, 2 beautiful children I adored, and a seemingly stable marriage. Then my brother Ethan decided he wanted my life. His calculated lies cost me my job, my freedom, and worst of all, my kids. Now he's famous for saving them from me. But he made one critical mistake. He underestimated how far a father would go to protect his children. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from. Hit like and subscribe as I reveal how my own flesh and blood destroyed everything I loved, and how I'm taking it all back. Before everything fell apart, I had what most would call the perfect life. Sacramento, California was my home, a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburb with manicured lawns and friendly neighbors who waved as you drove past. I'd been a science teacher at Roosevelt High School for 8 years, teaching chemistry and physics to teenagers who mostly pretended to hate school but secretly loved watching the experiments I'd prepare. I wasn't just any teacher, I was the one students came back to visit after graduation, the one parents requested by name for their kids. Mr. Evans makes science cool, I once overheard a student say, and that was all the validation I ever needed. I spent evenings designing interactive labs that would make complex concepts accessible. I started a robotics club that took our school to the state championships 2 years running. Teaching wasn't just my job, it was my calling, my purpose. My wife Amanda and I were high school sweethearts. We met in junior year when she transferred to my school. She sat next to me in AP Biology, and I spent more time studying her smile than cell structures. We dated through college, got married right after graduation, and built our life together brick by brick. 9 years of marriage had its ups and downs, but I thought we were solid. Our children were my world. Lily, our 7-year-old daughter, was a miniature version of her mother with my curiosity. She collected bugs in jars and wrote elaborate stories about their adventures. Noah, just 5, was quieter but equally bright. He could solve puzzles meant for kids twice his age and had this infectious belly laugh that could brighten the darkest day. Every night, I'd read them stories, making up different voices for each character until they fell asleep. Those quiet moments, watching their peaceful faces in the dim glow of the nightlight, were the happiest of my life. Then there was Ethan, my younger brother by 2 years. Growing up, Ethan always seemed to be living in my shadow, at least that's how he perceived it. While I was the studious one winning science fairs, Ethan was the creative one, jumping from band to band, convinced his music would make him famous someday. Our parents tried not to play favorites, but they couldn't hide their relief when I chose a stable career path. Meanwhile, Ethan was 32 and still finding himself playing small gigs at local bars and working part-time at a music store. "When are you going to get a real job?" our dad would ask him at family gatherings. And I'd see that familiar darkness cross Ethan's face. Looking back, the warning signs were there. Ethan would make small comments that seemed harmless at the time. "Must be nice having it all figured out," he'd say, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Man, you've got it made, great job, beautiful wife, perfect kids." "Some guys have all the luck," he'd remark, as if my life was a lottery win rather than something I'd worked hard to build. I dismissed these comments. Sibling rivalry was normal, right? I even tried to help him, offering to connect him with the music teacher at my school for possible opportunities. But my help only seemed to deepen his resentment. At our parents' anniversary party 6 months before everything fell apart, I noticed something odd. Ethan was unusually interested in my work, asking detailed questions about my schedule, about school policies, about my colleagues. I thought he was finally taking an interest in my life, maybe even considering teaching music himself. Amanda spent a lot of time chatting with him that night too, showing him pictures of the kids on her phone, laughing at his jokes. "Ethan's really matured," Amanda commented on the drive home. "He seems to be getting his life together." That night, as I tucked the kids into bed and went downstairs to grade papers, I remember feeling a deep sense of gratitude for my life. I had everything I'd ever wanted. I should have known it was too perfect to last. I had no idea that Ethan wasn't just making conversation at that party. He was gathering information. He wasn't admiring my life. He was coveting it. And he was already making plans to take it all away. The first sign that something was wrong came on a Tuesday in October. I arrived at my classroom to find that someone had accessed my lab storage cabinet. Nothing valuable was missing, just some basic chemicals rearranged, but I was certain I'd locked it the day before. I reported it to school security, who promised to look into it but suggested I might have forgotten to lock up. I dismissed it as a minor issue, though something felt off. A week later, I was grading tests when I noticed that several papers had answers changed in handwriting that wasn't the students'. I called each student in individually, but they all seemed genuinely confused and denied altering their work after submission. The school counselor suggested that maybe I was overworked and had mixed up the papers. I began to doubt myself. Then came the accusation that would start the avalanche. Jessica Winters, a quiet junior in my fourth period class, claimed I had made inappropriate comments to her after class. According to her, I had complimented her appearance and suggested she could improve her grade through extra credit, with a tone that implied something inappropriate. I never said anything like that. I insisted to Principal Wagner, feeling sick to my stomach at even being associated with such behavior. Wagner assured me they would investigate thoroughly before making any judgments. But I could tell by his expression that the mere accusation had already tarnished his view of me. He explained that they needed to follow protocol, which meant documenting the complaint and having a senior teacher sit in on my classes temporarily. "This is ridiculous," I told Amanda that night. "I've never been alone with Jessica. I've never made inappropriate comments to any student." Amanda's response wasn't what I expected. Rather than immediate support, she seemed hesitant. "Well, maybe she misinterpreted something you said?" Amanda suggested. "You do tend to joke around with your students." Her lack of unwavering support felt like a small betrayal. Looking back, it was the first crack in our foundation. Around this time, I began noticing changes at home too. Amanda was spending more time on her phone, smiling at texts, then quickly turning the screen away when I entered the room. She mentioned that Ethan had been helping her with a surprise for my upcoming birthday, explaining the secretive behavior. But something didn't add up. One evening I came home early from a staff meeting that ended sooner than expected. I found Amanda on the phone in our bedroom, speaking in a hushed, intimate tone I hadn't heard her use in months. "He doesn't suspect anything," she was saying. "Don't worry." When she saw me, she quickly ended the call. "Just talking to Karen about your surprise party," she explained, referring to her best friend. But Karen called our landline 20 minutes later, unaware I was home, asking Amanda about dinner plans for the weekend. My suspicions grew. When Amanda was in the shower the next morning, I checked her phone, something I'd never done before and felt guilty about doing now. There were dozens of texts between her and Ethan, many deleted so I could only see one side of conversations. What remained seemed innocent enough, but there were gaps, references to conversations I wasn't privy to. One message from Ethan read, deleted the others as discussed. "Call me when he's at work tomorrow." When I confronted Amanda about the texts, her reaction was explosive. "You're checking my phone now? What's wrong with you? He's your brother." "We're planning your birthday," she shouted. "I can't believe you're this paranoid and jealous. Maybe you should talk to someone professional about these trust issues." Her deflection worked. I ended up apologizing, questioning my own judgment. But the seed of doubt had been planted. At school, things continued to deteriorate. Colleagues who used to chat with me in the teacher's lounge now found reasons to eat elsewhere. Students whispered when I walked down the hallway. Principal Wagner called me into his office again. "There's been another complaint, Marcus," he said grimly. A parent claims their daughter overheard you making inappropriate comments about female students' appearances to another teacher. That's completely false, I insisted. Who would I supposedly have said this to? Who overheard? I can't reveal that information during an active investigation, he replied. But I need to warn you, these allegations are serious. The board is getting involved. I felt like I was drowning in quicksand the more I struggled against these false accusations. The deeper I sank. That Friday night, I stayed late at school, desperately reviewing my gray book and email communications, trying to find anything that could have been misconstrued. I drove home exhausted around 8 p.m., looking forward to at least having the weekend with my family. Instead, I found 3 police cars parked outside my house. Blue lights silently pulsing in the darkness. 2 officers approached as I got out of my car. Marcus Evans? One asked. When I nodded, he continued, "We have a warrant to search these premises and seize your electronic devices." My children watched from the window, confused and frightened, as strangers entered our home and began going through our belongings. Amanda stood in the doorway, arms crossed, avoiding my gaze. "What's going on?" I asked her in a hushed voice. "They think you have inappropriate material on your computer," she whispered back. "What have you done, Marcus?" The fact that she could even ask me that question felt like a knife to my heart. The search lasted for hours. The police combed through our home, seizing my personal laptop, tablet, and phone. They paid particular attention to my home office, taking the desktop computer I used for schoolwork. The officers remained professional but cold, ignoring my repeated questions about what exactly they were looking for. "We'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow for questioning," the lead detective finally told me as they were leaving. "In the meantime, don't leave town." After they left, Amanda took the kids to her mother's house, despite my pleas for her to stay so we could talk. She claimed the children were too upset to remain in the house after the police search. "I need to think, Marcus. I don't know what's happening, but I need to protect our kids right now," she said, not meeting my eyes as she packed overnight bags. I spent that night alone in our empty house, trying to make sense of what was happening. I hadn't done anything wrong. Someone was setting me up, but who would do this? And why? The next morning, I went to the police station with an attorney I could barely afford, a former student's parent who agreed to represent me as a favor. The questioning was brutal. "We found inappropriate images of minors on your work computer, Mr. Evans," the detective stated flatly. "Images that were accessed through your login credentials at the school." "That's impossible," I insisted. "I've never accessed such material. Someone must have used my account. Your account was accessed at times when you were confirmed to be in the building. During your prep periods when no one else would have access to your classroom computer," he countered. "The IP address matches." My attorney managed to end the interrogation. But the damage was done. I was released pending further investigation, but the detective's parting words chilled me to the bone. "Stay away from schools and children until this investigation is complete, Mr. Evans. That includes your own children if their mother requests it." When I returned home, there was a letter from the school district informing me of my immediate suspension pending investigation. My email access had been cut off. My teacher page on the school website had been removed. I tried calling Amanda repeatedly, but she wouldn't answer. Finally, around dinner time, she picked up. "Amanda, please, you know me. You know I would never do anything like what they're suggesting," I pleaded. Her voice was distant, formal. "The police showed me what they found, Marcus. How could you risk everything like this? How could you bring this into our home where our children live? They showed you? That's not even legal during an active investigation. And whatever they showed you, it wasn't mine. I'm being framed." "Framed? By who? Why would anyone do that?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I'm going to find out." 3 days later, I was served with divorce papers. Amanda was filing for emergency full custody of Lily and Noah, citing the ongoing criminal investigation. The temporary custody order prohibited me from contacting my children until the court hearing. Financial problems quickly mounted. My salary was suspended. I had to pay the attorney. The mortgage was due. Friends I'd known for years stopped returning my calls. Then I discovered something that made everything clear. My neighbor mentioned seeing Ethan's car at my house multiple times when I was at work. When I confronted Amanda about this in a tense phone call, she admitted that Ethan had been supporting her through this difficult time. He's been so helpful with the kids, she said. They adore him, and he's stepped up to be there for us while you've been dealing with all this. I finally called my parents, hoping they would at least believe in my innocence. The conversation was heartbreaking. Ethan told us everything, my mother said, her voice breaking. He showed us the police report. How could you, Marcus? We raised you better than this. Mom, Ethan is lying to you. He's behind this somehow. He's always been jealous of my life. Now you're blaming your brother? This is low, even in your situation, my father cut in. Ethan has done nothing but support Amanda and those poor children. He's the one who convinced us not to cut you off completely, to give you a chance to get help. I hung up, reeling from the betrayal. Everything was becoming clear. Ethan hadn't just opportunistically stepped in to comfort my wife during a crisis, he had created the crisis. I hired a private investigator with the last of my savings. He discovered that Ethan had been in contact with Amanda for months before the allegations surfaced. Much more frequently than either had admitted. The PI also found that Ethan had worked briefly for an IT company that serviced Roosevelt High School's computer systems 2 years earlier, something he had never mentioned to me. Before I could act on this information, I received another devastating blow. Amanda and the children had moved in with Ethan, temporarily, while she looked for a new place. According to mutual friends, Ethan was playing the supportive brother-in-law, helping with the kids, taking them to school, comforting Amanda. He wasn't just stealing my life, he was replacing me in it. The custody hearing was scheduled for a rainy Tuesday morning in November. I arrived at the courthouse in my only suit. The same one I wore to parent-teacher conferences. My attorney looked grim as we reviewed our strategy one last time. The judge tends to err on the side of caution when it comes to children's safety, he warned me. With an active police investigation involving material of this nature, it's going to be an uphill battle. I hadn't seen my children in 3 weeks. The longest I'd ever been away from them before this was a 4-day teachers' conference in San Diego. I ached to hug them, to tell them everything would be okay, to see their faces light up with recognition instead of the fear and confusion I'd glimpsed the night of the police search. The courtroom felt cavernous and cold. Amanda sat on the opposite side with her attorney, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. Ethan sat directly behind them, a supportive hand occasionally touching Amanda's shoulder. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away, playing the part of the uncomfortable brother caught in a family tragedy. The evidence presented against me was overwhelming and meticulously crafted. Amanda's attorney detailed the police investigation, the material found on my work computer, the allegations from students. She painted a picture of an educator who had abused his position of trust. My attorney argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that I had no history of inappropriate behavior, that the timing of these accusations was suspicious. But I could see in the judge's eyes that his mind was already made up. In cases concerning the welfare of minor children, this court must prioritize their safety above all other considerations, the judge stated. Given the serious nature of the allegations and the ongoing criminal investigation, I am granting temporary full custody to the mother, with no visitation rights for the father until the criminal matter is resolved. The gavel fell with a crack that seemed to split my world in two. I'll appeal, my attorney whispered. But we both knew it would go nowhere until the criminal investigation concluded. As we left the courtroom, Ethan approached me in the hallway. "I'm sorry it came to this, bro," he said. His voice low, concerned, but his eyes told a different story. There was triumph there, barely concealed. "The kids will be okay. I'm making sure of it. You did this, I hissed. I don't know how yet, but I know it was you. He placed a hand on my shoulder, making sure others could see this apparent attempt at brotherly reconciliation. You need help, Marcus. This paranoia, these accusations. This is why Amanda and the kids are afraid. 2 days later, I received the official termination letter from the school district. The board had voted unanimously to fire me based on moral turpitude clauses in my contract. My teaching license was suspended pending the outcome of the criminal investigation, effectively ending my career even if I was eventually cleared. The local newspaper ran a small article about a local teacher under investigation, not naming me directly due to legal concerns but providing enough details that anyone in the community could figure it out. Parents I'd known for years crossed the street to avoid me at the grocery store. I was forced to sell my house to cover legal fees and moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. The walls were thin, the carpet stained, the neighbors loud. At night, I would sit on the balcony that overlooked the parking lot and think about Lily and Noah, wondering if they thought I had abandoned them. I became obsessed with proving my innocence. I requested the evidence against me through my attorney and spent hours examining the timestamps of when the illicit material was supposedly accessed. I noticed inconsistencies times when I was documented as being in meetings or teaching classes. I found evidence that my computer had been remotely accessed, but without proof of who had done it. These observations were useless. I tried confronting Ethan again, this time at the music store where he worked. I wanted to catch him off guard, away from Amanda and any witnesses who might sympathize with him. You're ruining my life, I told him after cornering him in the drum section. Why? What did I ever do to you? For a brief moment, the mask slipped. You had everything handed to you, he sneered. The golden boy. Perfect Marcus with his perfect life that he didn't even appreciate. Now you know what it feels like to have nothing. A colleague approached, and instantly Ethan's expression changed to one of concern. Please, Marcus, don't do this. You're scaring me. I want to help you, but you need to get professional help first. The store manager asked me to leave. Later that day, I was served with a restraining order. Ethan claimed I had threatened him, that he feared for his safety and the safety of Amanda and the children now living with him. The restraining order was the final blow. I couldn't come within 500 feet of my brother, which meant I couldn't go near his house where my children were now living. 6 months after the first allegation, I hit rock bottom. The criminal investigation was still ongoing, with no end in sight. I hadn't seen my children in half a year. I'd lost my career, my home, my reputation. I was working night shifts at a gas station just to afford my apartment and ramen noodles. One night, sitting on that sad excuse for a balcony, I opened a bottle of whiskey and stared at the rusty railing. I wondered how hard it would be to climb over it, how long the fall would take, whether it would hurt or if the pain would finally, mercifully end. My phone buzzed with a news alert, a feature about local heroes making a difference in the community. There was Ethan's face on the screen, smiling beneath the headline, Local Musician Starts Charity for Children of Crisis. The article praised him for supporting his niece and nephew through an unspecified family trauma, and channeling the experience into creating a foundation to help other children. Something inside me shifted. The despair crystallized into rage, and then hardened into resolve. Ethan hadn't just taken my life, he was profiting from my destruction, using my children as props in his sick game. I poured the whiskey down the drain. If I was going to fight back, I needed a clear head. I might have lost everything, but I still had the truth on my side. And I would find a way to prove it, no matter how long it took. 6 months later, I was barely recognizable as the science teacher I once was. I'd taken a warehouse job under the name Mark Edwards, loading packages onto trucks from dusk till dawn. The physical labor kept my body exhausted enough that I could occasionally sleep without nightmares. I'd grown a beard, lost weight, and generally blended into the background of society exactly where Ethan wanted me. But while I appeared defeated on the outside, inside I was methodically planning my comeback. I had converted my apartment's closet into an investigation room, with timelines and connections mapped out on the walls. I documented every inconsistency in the case against me, every suspicious coincidence involving Ethan. One evening, while eating a microwave dinner and scrolling through local news, I froze. There was Ethan on my screen, being interviewed on a regional morning show. He sat on a plush couch, guitar on his lap, looking every bit the sensitive artist as he strummed gently. "Your charity work has really taken off," the host was saying. "And now your music career seems to be following suit. Your single Guardian is climbing the indie charts." Ethan smiled modestly. "When something like this happens in your family, you have two choices. You can let it destroy you, or you can channel that pain into something positive. My niece and nephew needed someone to protect them, to be their voice. That experience inspired my music." The camera panned to show album artwork featuring a silhouette of a man with two small children. "My children." For those just tuning in, the host explained. Ethan Evans stepped in to support his niece and nephew after his brother was accused of some truly disturbing behavior. He not only provided them with a stable home alongside their mother, but also founded the Guardians of Innocence charity to help other children in similar situations. I threw my dinner plate against the wall, shattering it. Ethan wasn't just stealing my life, he was rewriting it, casting himself as the hero and me as the villain. Using my children as both props and profit generators. The next day, I called in sick to work and drove to a coffee shop 2 towns over, where no one would recognize me. I needed to research Ethan's new public persona without the risk of being identified. What I discovered made my blood boil. Ethan had parlayed his heroic actions into a budding music career. His songs about standing up for those who can't protect themselves were gaining traction. He'd done interviews with local papers, appeared on morning shows, and even given a TEDx talk about turning family tragedy into community action. In every appearance, he carefully avoided naming me directly, smart enough to avoid defamation, but the implication was clear. He was the savior, I was the monster. I was about to leave when a notification popped up on my laptop. Someone had sent me a message through an old email account I rarely checked anymore. The sender's name made me catch my breath. Jason Tucker, a former student who had graduated 2 years earlier and was now studying computer science at Caltech. "Mr. Evans," the message read, "I don't believe what they said about you. You changed my life. If you need help, reach out. I've learned a lot about digital forensics." For the first time in a year, I felt a flicker of hope. Jason and I met at a diner off the highway. He had grown taller, more confident, but his eyes still lit up when discussing technology, just as they had in my classroom. The timestamps on those files never made sense to me, he explained after I shared my suspicions about being framed. "You were famous for never missing class, but some of those files were accessed during your teaching periods." "Exactly. But the police said the login records showed it was me. Login credentials can be stolen. IP addresses can be spoofed. If someone had access to the school's network and knew what they were doing, they could make it look like you accessed those files when you were actually teaching 30 kids about covalent bonds." With Jason's help, I began building a case. He helped me trace digital breadcrumbs, uncovering evidence that someone had indeed accessed my school accounts remotely. The technical details would have gone over my head before, but now I clung to every bite of information like a drowning man to a life preserver. "There's more," Jason said one evening as we worked in a 24-hour diner. "I found a connection between Ethan and the school's IT provider. He worked for Netcore Solutions 2 years ago, the same company that maintains Roosevelt High's computer systems." "He never mentioned that," I said, the pieces clicking into place. "He had inside knowledge of the school's network. He knew how to access my accounts. And he would have known about security vulnerabilities, backdoors into the system. We dug deeper, gathering evidence methodically. Jason taught me about digital forensics. How to document everything properly so it would hold up under scrutiny. We were building a case, brick by digital brick. Then came a breakthrough I hadn't anticipated. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. About Ethan. About the kids. Meet me at Lakeside Park, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone. Amanda. I debated whether it was a trap. But my need to know about my children outweighed my caution. I arrived early, scanning the park for police or any sign of Ethan. Instead, I found Amanda sitting alone on a bench, looking thinner and more tired than I remembered. She flinched when I sat down, maintaining distance between us. "I'm sorry," she began, her voice barely audible. "I think I've made a terrible mistake." "Which one?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Believing I was capable of those things? Taking my children away? Moving in with my brother? All of it," she whispered. "Ethan, he's not who I thought he was. Not who any of us thought he was." She revealed that she had begun to notice disturbing patterns in Ethan's behavior. He controlled access to the children, monitored her phone and computer, isolated her from friends and family. When she questioned anything, he would subtly remind her of the danger I supposedly represented, reinforcing her dependence on him. "Last week, I found something on his computer," she continued. "He didn't know I saw it. It was a detailed plan, Marcus. Notes about how to frame you, how to take over your life. It went back months before any allegations surfaced." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I'm afraid," she admitted. "Not just for me, but for Lily and Noah. The way he controls everything, the way he uses them for publicity. It's not right. They ask about you all the time, and he tells them you chose to leave. I've gone along with it because I was scared and confused, but I can't do it anymore." She agreed to secretly copy the files from Ethan's computer and provide a sworn statement about what she had witnessed. It was dangerous if Ethan discovered what she was doing. There was no telling how he would react. But it was a risk she was willing to take. "How are they?" I asked as she was leaving, my voice breaking. "Lily and Noah. Are they okay?" Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "They miss you. Lily still sleeps with that constellation nightlight you gave her. Noah carries your old watch everywhere, even though it's too big for his wrist. They haven't forgotten you, Marcus. No matter what Ethan tells them." With Amanda's help, the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. She provided screenshots of Ethan's detailed plans to frame me, including notes on how to access my school accounts, when to plant the illicit material, and how to manipulate Amanda's trust. The evidence was damning, but I knew we needed more to overcome the damage to my reputation. I needed to catch Ethan admitting to at least part of his scheme. With Jason's help, I set up a recording device that would capture any conversation within range. Then I deliberately violated the restraining order, confronting Ethan outside his recording studio late one night. I knew the risk I could be arrested, but I also knew this might be my only chance to get him to incriminate himself. "Your charade is over," I told him when he emerged from the building. "I know what you did, and soon everyone else will too." He laughed, confident in his victory. "No one will believe you. You're a disgraced teacher hiding from a criminal investigation. I'm a philanthropist helping traumatized children. Who do you think people will listen to? I have evidence, Ethan. Digital evidence that proves you framed me." Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty, perhaps even fear. Then he regained his composure. "You always thought you were so much smarter than me," he sneered. "You had everything handed to you while I struggled. The perfect son, the perfect husband, the perfect father. Now look at you. You orchestrated all of this because you were jealous? You destroyed my life over sibling rivalry? I took what should have been mine," he hissed, stepping closer. "And I did it better than you ever could. Those kids adore me. Amanda practically worships me. I'm the hero of this story, Marcus. You're just the cautionary tale. It was all on record, not a full confession, but enough to raise serious questions about his motives and actions. I had what I needed. As I walked away, Ethan called after me, "I'll have you arrested for violating the restraining order." I turned back with a smile. Go ahead. I'd welcome the chance to present my evidence in court. He didn't report me. Instead, he increased security around his house and studio. He knew I was coming for him, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Ethan was afraid. With the recording, Amanda's statement, Jason's digital forensics, and my own meticulous documentation, I finally had enough to fight back. I found a new attorney, one who specialized in cases involving digital evidence, and presented everything we had gathered. "This is compelling," she said after reviewing our materials. "Not just compelling enough to clear your name, but potentially enough to bring charges against your brother for fabricating evidence, defamation, and several computer crimes. We filed motions to dismiss the restraining order, reopen the custody case, and compel a proper investigation into the source of the illicit material on my school computer." The wheels of justice turned slowly, but they were finally turning in my direction. For the first time in more than a year, I allowed myself to feel something like hope. I was no longer just surviving, I was fighting back. And I was going to win. The legal process moved agonizingly slowly, but I was no longer alone in my fight. With my new attorney, Catherine Lawson, leading the charge, we filed a comprehensive case against Ethan, detailing his elaborate scheme to destroy my life and assume my role in my family. Catherine was a former prosecutor who specialized in cases involving digital evidence. She understood how to present technical information to judges and juries in ways they could understand. More importantly, she believed me from our first meeting. "This level of calculated malice is uncommon," she said, reviewing our evidence, "but not unprecedented. What your brother did was essentially identity theft of your life, not just your financial information." Our first victory came when the judge agreed to hear our motion to lift the restraining order. The recording of Ethan's partial confession, combined with the digital evidence Jason had compiled, raised enough questions about the order's legitimacy that the judge suspended it pending further investigation. This small win gave me the freedom to move more openly, to begin rebuilding my public case. I reached out to former colleagues who might still believe in me. Most ignored my calls, but a few agreed to meet, including Eleanor Simmons, the veteran English teacher who had been my mentor when I first started at Roosevelt High. "I never believed it," Eleanor told me over coffee. "I've taught alongside you for 8 years. I know your character. But the evidence seemed so overwhelming, and questioning it meant questioning the entire administration." Eleanor introduced me to other teachers who had doubts about the allegations, but had been afraid to speak up. Together, they provided statements about my character and teaching record, recalling specific instances that contradicted the timeline of alleged misconduct. Meanwhile, Jason continued his digital detective work, uncovering more connections between Ethan and the school's IT systems. He found evidence that Ethan had maintained backdoor access to the network long after his employment with NetCore Solutions ended. "He created a ghost account," Jason explained. "It wouldn't appear in normal system audits, but it gave him administrator-level access. From there, he could impersonate any user, including you." Amanda was taking an enormous risk by helping us while still living under Ethan's roof. She carefully documented his controlling behavior, his manipulation of the children, and his growing obsession with his public image as their savior. "He makes them perform for visitors," she told me during one of our clandestine meetings. "Lily and Noah have to talk about how he rescued them. If they mention missing you, he gets this look in his eyes. I've started sleeping with my door locked." The most damning evidence came from Amanda's careful documentation of Ethan's computer activities. She managed to photograph his detailed notes on framing me, including timestamps of when he planted evidence, contacts at the school he'd manipulated, and even scripts for what to say to Amanda to turn her against me. With mounting evidence in hand, Catherine filed motions to reopen both the criminal investigation and the custody case. She also prepared a separate civil suit against Ethan for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and tortious interference with my career and family relationships. "We're building a three-pronged attack," she explained. "Clear your name in the criminal investigation, regain access to your children through family court, and hold Ethan accountable through civil litigation." As we built our legal case, I worked on rebuilding my life. I found a better apartment, one with 2 small bedrooms, so Lily and Noah would have their own space when I finally got to see them again. I started applying to tutoring positions, jobs that wouldn't require a teaching license but would let me use my educational skills. Our breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Rachel Chin, the IT director at Roosevelt High, contacted Catherine after hearing rumors about our case. "I've been conducting an internal security audit," she explained when we met. "Standard procedure after any breach. I found anomalies that never made sense, access patterns that didn't match known user behaviors, login times that contradicted staff schedules. When I heard what you were alleging about outside manipulation of the system, it clicked." Rachel's technical expertise lent credibility to our claims. Her official report, submitted both to the school board and to the detective handling my case, corroborated Jason's findings about the ghost account and unauthorized access. With this new evidence, Detective Phillips, who had led the original investigation against me, agreed to re-examine the case. This time, he focused on Ethan, obtaining warrants to search his devices and financial records. What they found exceeded even my suspicions about Ethan's deception. Not only had he meticulously planned and executed my downfall, but he had also been siphoning donations from his charity into personal accounts, using my children's trauma as a fundraising tool while spending the money on studio time and music promotion. As the evidence mounted against him, Ethan's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Several musicians who had worked with him came forward with stories of his obsessive talk about taking back what was rightfully his, and becoming the better brother. A former girlfriend described his fixation on my family, how he would drive past my house at night and talk about how Amanda should have been with him instead. Local media outlets that had previously celebrated Ethan's charity work now ran stories questioning his narrative. The headline, "Hero or Villain? Local musician's charity under investigation," was particularly satisfying to see. Ethan's response was to double down, giving tearful interviews claiming I was now persecuting him out of jealousy and resentment. But his performances had lost their conviction. People were beginning to see through the act. Amanda finally found the courage to leave, taking the children to her parents' house where Ethan couldn't reach them. She filed for a protective order against him, citing emotional manipulation and controlling behavior. With the criminal investigation now focused on Ethan rather than me, Catherine moved aggressively to clear my name. The district attorney, faced with overwhelming evidence of tampering and false accusations, formally dropped all charges against me. In a carefully worded press release, the DA's office acknowledged that new evidence strongly suggests that Mr. Marcus Evans was the victim of an elaborate frame-up involving digitally fabricated evidence. They stopped short of naming Ethan directly, as his case was still developing, but the implication was clear. The school board held an emergency session to review my termination. With the criminal charges dropped and Rachel Chen's technical report in hand, they voted unanimously to rescind my firing, issue a formal apology, and begin the process of reinstating my teaching license. It wasn't a complete victory. The damage to my reputation couldn't be undone overnight, but it was a start. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I could walk down the street without shame, tell people my real name, and hope for a future that included my children. The final piece fell into place when the family court judge granted an emergency hearing to revisit the custody arrangement. With Amanda now supporting my petition and the criminal charges dismissed, there was no legal basis to keep me from my children. The night before the hearing, Catherine called with news that made me sink to my knees in gratitude. The judge has reviewed the evidence, she said. He's prepared to grant immediate visitation rights tomorrow, with a path to shared custody pending a formal evaluation. After nearly 2 years of separation, I was finally going to see my children again. The family court building looked exactly as I remembered it from that devastating day when I lost custody of my children. But this time, I walked in with Catherine beside me, a thick folder of exonerating evidence under her arm, and something I hadn't felt in years: confidence. Amanda was already there with her new attorney, a kind-faced woman who had helped her escape Ethan's control. There was an awkward moment when our eyes met, two people who had once shared everything, now connected primarily through pain and the children we both loved. "Thank you," I said simply, "for finding the courage to help." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I should have believed you from the beginning. I'm so sorry, Marcus." The hearing was brief but emotional. The judge reviewed the extensive evidence showing I had been framed, noted the dismissal of all criminal charges, and acknowledged Amanda's new statement supporting my role in our children's lives. "This court rarely sees a case with such clear evidence of deliberate deception," the judge stated. "Mr. Evans, the system has failed you and your children. While we cannot restore the lost time, we can ensure no further injustice occurs." He granted immediate supervised visitation, transitioning to shared custody within 30 days if the initial visits went well. I would have my children back in my life before the end of the month. As word spread of my exoneration, the media narrative shifted dramatically. Local papers that had once implied my guilt now ran features on "Justice Delayed," the Marcus Evans story. The regional news station that had featured Ethan's charity work now interviewed me about surviving a malicious frame-up. I was careful in these interviews, focusing on the facts rather than emotional accusations against Ethan. I didn't need to villainize him, his own actions spoke for themselves. The criminal case against Ethan moved swiftly. Faced with overwhelming digital evidence and testimony from multiple witnesses, including Amanda, he accepted a plea deal rather than face trial. He was sentenced to 5 years for fraud, fabricating evidence, and misuse of charitable funds, with additional time for computer crimes. Our parents, who had believed Ethan's lies, were devastated by the truth. They reached out repeatedly, seeking reconciliation, but I wasn't ready. The wound of their betrayal was still too fresh. I told them I needed time, that perhaps we could rebuild our relationship slowly, for the sake of Lily and Noah, who deserved to know their grandparents. The day I finally saw my children again was both the happiest and most terrifying of my life. The supervised visit was arranged at a neutral facility designed for family reunifications, with a social worker present to monitor our interaction. I arrived early, pacing the colorful playroom, wondering if they would remember me, if they would fear me based on whatever Ethan had told them, if they would reject me entirely. When the door opened and they walked in, time seemed to stop. Lily, now 9, had grown taller, her hair longer. Noah, 7, had lost his baby face, replaced by the angular features that reminded me of my own childhood photos. There was a moment of hesitation, a silence that stretched between us like a chasm. Then Lily's eyes widened with recognition. "Daddy," she whispered, "is it really you?" I knelt down to their level, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, sweetheart. It's really me." Noah approached cautiously. "Uncle Ethan said you didn't want to see us anymore." "That was never true," I said gently. "Not for a single moment. I've thought about you every day, miss you every minute. There's nothing in this world I wanted more than to be with you both." Lily was the first to rush into my arms, followed moments later by Noah. I held them tight, breathing in the scent of their hair, feeling their small bodies shaking with sobs that matched my own. "I never stopped loving you," I told them. "And I never will." The supervised visits quickly proved unnecessary. The children remembered me, loved me, wanted to be with me. The transition to shared custody happened even faster than the judge had outlined, with Amanda's full support. Rebuilding my professional life took longer. Though my teaching license was reinstated, I decided not to return to Roosevelt High. Instead, I accepted a position at a private school in a neighboring district, teaching advanced science courses to gifted students. The school administrators knew my story and believed in second chances. My relationship with Amanda evolved into a respectful co-parenting arrangement. The romantic love was gone, damaged beyond repair by the traumas we had endured, but we found a new way to be a family for Lily and Noah's sake. As for Ethan, I visited him once in prison, not seeking reconciliation but understanding. I needed to know why my own brother had orchestrated such elaborate destruction. "You had everything I was supposed to have," he said, unable to meet my eyes. "The career, the family, the respect. It should have been me. We could have both had good lives, Ethan," I replied. "There was room in this world for both of us to succeed, to be happy." He had no answer for that, and I realized he might never understand the depth of his own brokenness. I left knowing I would not return. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. The most important healing happened at home, in the moments with my children. Reading bedtime stories again, helping with homework, teaching Noah to ride a bike, watching Lily perform in her school play. Each ordinary moment felt miraculous after being denied them for so long. One night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked a question that broke my heart anew. "Daddy, were you sad when you couldn't see us?" I sat on the edge of her bed, choosing my words carefully. "Yes, sweetheart. I was very sad. But I never gave up hope that I would see you again. And that hope kept me going even on the hardest days. I knew you didn't leave us on purpose," she said with the simple wisdom of children. "Even when Uncle Ethan said you did." I told Noah too. I kissed her forehead, amazed by her resilience, her innate sense of truth. The experience changed me profoundly. I became an advocate for those falsely accused, particularly in cases involving digital evidence. I founded a support network called Truth Seekers that connected people fighting wrongful allegations with technical experts and attorneys who could help them navigate the complex intersection of technology and law. Through this work, I met others who had faced similar injustices, people who had lost jobs, relationships, and reputations due to digital frame-ups or misleading evidence. I shared my story to give them hope that justice, however delayed, was still possible. 3 years after my exoneration, I stood before a packed auditorium at a conference on digital forensics and legal justice. In the front row sat Lily and Noah, now 12 and 10. Watching proudly as I shared our family's journey from devastation to recovery. The systems we trust to protect us are only as reliable as the humans who operate them, and as secure as the technology that supports them, I told the audience. When either fails, lives can be destroyed. But I'm here today as living proof that the truth, however buried, can eventually come to light. As I concluded my speech to thunderous applause, I looked at my children and felt a wave of gratitude so powerful it nearly overwhelmed me. We had survived the unimaginable. We had found our way back to each other. And in doing so, we had discovered a resilience we never knew we possessed. The scars remained, they always would. But they no longer defined us. What defined us now was our capacity to heal, to forgive where possible, to set boundaries where necessary, and to move forward with hard-won wisdom and profound appreciation for the simple gift of being together. The journey had cost me almost everything. But what I gained in return, a deeper understanding of justice, of family, of my own strength, was beyond measure. My brother's lies had nearly destroyed me, but in fighting to reclaim my truth, I had become someone stronger than I ever thought possible. If you've made it to the end of my story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Has anyone else experienced betrayal from someone close to you? How did you find the strength to move forward? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if this story touched you in any way, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more stories of resilience, and share with someone who might need to be reminded that even in our darkest moments, hope remains. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember that no matter what challenges you're facing, you are stronger than you know.